So, we're finally going ahead with another book summary that I've started, I think 2 or 3 days ago, even though I've uploaded it yesterday, I think. But we're now gonna go ahead, and it is, at least in my point of view, a pretty amazing one and a pretty interesting one. But there's gonna be more after the intro, as always. And it's lagging once again, and I don't know why. I really don't know. But yeah, with that being said, hello, welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And I'm really happy to record this episode. I'm looking forward to it. But, before we even go through the episode, as quite always, I should actually pre-record that and just cut that in. Because I kind of feel dumb always doing the exact same thing. But yeah, there is 3 different links down in the description. They all 3 are pretty important. The first one is to the podcast, because I'm assuming that you are on the YouTube video. And if you're willing to watch or actually listen to the podcast, then please head down into the description, click on the first link, and it is going to lead you to a page where you can also choose where you are going to listen to the podcast to. You can listen to it on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Castbox, Apple Podcast, whatever. Wherever you're just listening to your podcast, it's probably also going to be there. I at least hope. So, and if it is not there, please just hit me up and I'm going to correct that. The second link is to the notes. I'm going to hopefully note some things and I'm hopefully going to just highlight some things in this article that we're going to go through, or in this book summary that we're going to go through, and then I'm going to put this down into a PDF and you can download it, which means that you can actually then kind of practically only read what I've been going through the whole episode long, which means that you do not even have to just read it, or you do not even have to listen nor watch the YouTube video or to the podcast or that podcast, but you can also just read the PDF. And that's quite it. And the last, but maybe even the most important one, is music. If you're willing to have some background music, which is definitely something that I can suggest, then please go down into the description. The third link is going to lead to a Google Drives folder. And there is like 5 different tracks and you can choose between, I think it is actually 5 or 6, and they're all just kind of different, like the genre is different. So try it out, try it out. But why are you such a motherfucker? Internet connection, please connect to the internet. No, now. Why are you such a motherfucker? So I don't know why it's not working, but I'm not able to just highlight some things. I'm hopefully going to add it afterwards, and I'm hopefully going to just go through it once again afterwards and just put it down into the PDF. But let's move on. When people fall in love, no justification for their attachment is necessary. Yeah, it actually seems to be the case. And I think it was also kinda the case. Not quite sure about that, because I can't really tell, I can't really tell, but I'm actually relying there on him, on this person, on this amazing person that went through quite some years, I guess, of being a psychiatrist and just listening to people and listening to his clients and just writing down these things that he has seen and or recognized a lot of people are talking about. There is definitely going to be some patterns, and there's definitely going to be some things that a lot of people are talking about, and it is probably also the case in your job or whatever you're doing and whatever you are also trying to kind of maybe figure out. There's probably also going to be some patterns and some things that quite some people, or maybe even animals, if it is about animals, are doing. But yeah, when people fall out of love, the demands for an explanation are insistent. What happened? What is at fault? Or who's at fault? Why couldn't you work it out? We didn't love each other anymore. Is not in most cases a sufficient response. It definitely fucking is not. And it is pretty interesting. Like, falling in love seems to be something that's quite easy. Seems to be quite something that, there just doesn't need to be an explanation for that. Like, we're just falling in love. It is what it is. It is just good, But once something is broken down or something breaks down, we just really kind of are willing to have an explanation, are willing to have some sort of a reason why things happen. Even though I kind of believe that we often want to have reasons, even when it is something good. But if I'm just thinking about love, when we're talking about love, it's definitely like, okay, we don't need any reasons. We really don't. We're not going to ask ourselves like, okay, why does this person actually like me that much? Or why did we fall in love? Asking yourself like, why this person likes me, it actually makes sense. And I think also people do that. And I think also I did that maybe. Not quite sure about that though. But still, it's like, it's not that like of an important thing, I would say. Just compared to why did this person leave me? Why does this person not like me any longer? And all those things. Like, it seems to be way, 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 way more important and way more interesting for just the majority of the people, and also probably for me as well. Only bad things happen quickly. And I think this is one of the most important ones, so please listen. Only bad things happen quickly. All the happiness producing processes in our lives take time, usually a long time. Learning new things, changing old behaviors, building satisfying relationships, raising children. This is why patience and determination are among life's primary virtues. And I think it is definitely the case. Like, whatever is just not good for you, or whatever is just really bad for you indeed, like, let's talk about smoking. Let's talk about some other addictions that you might be having. These are, you're really able to just develop those addictions pretty quickly, even though it might not really just be that quickly. I think that it actually feels really quickly, but in the end, or just in quote unquote reality, it is actually maybe even a process of just several, maybe even years, maybe it's months, maybe it is actually weeks as well. But I think it is actually like not that quickly, but it only feels really quickly. And, anyway, it is something that happens pretty quickly or can happen pretty quickly because it's like, we are tricking ourselves into it. Maybe some kinda, just because of hormones, just because of feelings, just because of, when we're doing something that feels good, then it is probably like time runs by like fucking sand through our fucking hands or something like that. I don't know. Nearly every human action is in some way an expression of how we think about ourselves, which is pretty interesting. Nothing is so beautiful as a promise right after it is given. Lying to ourselves disables us entirely from making needed change. And it is something that I've been talking about before. And it is also something that I'm probably going to talk about from this point on, even more, I guess, because I think it is an incredibly important point, an incredibly important recognition, noticement, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. But I think it is definitely something that is important to think about and also talk about, because it's like, if you're lying to yourself, if you're not being honest to yourself, you're probably going to be like, well, it's not been my fault. It's been his fault. Obviously you're lying, but in the end, you're putting yourself into a spot where it is not your fault. At least you believe it. Whether you actually believe in it or you're just knowing that you're lying, actually, you don't really think that you are in charge then. There's nothing to change about you then. There's only something that another person has to change, the person that you have just told that it was his or her fault, some kind of. But it wasn't your fault. So therefore, you do not even have to change anything. So therefore, it puts yourself into a position where you are also not going to just change anything. And it is not good. It's not good for your process or progress. Progress in terms of being able to handle maybe some things that we are not good at yet and getting better at them. But if we are lying to ourselves and if we are not honest to ourselves also about our capabilities, we're not going to develop them. We're not going to work on them. We're not going to just do anything about anything just because we don't think that there is a need of it or we should be doing something, probably. A conviction that there exists somewhere the person who will save us with his or her love. Much of the infidelity that is the hallmark of unhappy marriages rests on this illusion, unfortunately. Really unfortunately. And it is truly a pity. It truly is a pity when you're just married to somebody and you're really unhappy about that, and also the other person is really unhappy about it. Why are you then married? I can't just, of course, understand that sometimes it is a little bit of a fucked up situation, since it's like, okay, you are old, the other person is also old, and it's like, okay, you're gonna die in 20 years anyway. But still, I don't know. I don't know if it's that good. Even though you're old and even though you're just gonna die in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, maybe even you're gonna just live your maybe 50 years long. Who knows? Maybe you're gonna be the oldest person in the world. Who really knows? I don't know. But the thing is, when both people are actually really unhappy in this relationship, then I don't know, there's no need to be together any longer, Of course, in some situations there might be a reason, like kids and all those things, but it's it is fucked up in the end. It really is. The word closure, or closure, I think it's closure, isn't it? With its comforting applications that grief is a time-limited process from which we all recover. I'm gonna repeat that again because I think it's probably a pretty important one. But something isn't working as I want it to work. My shortcuts aren't working any longer. Can I do just something like here? Well, I can do it there, but why can't... Why? This is my question. Why isn't it working any longer? Never mind. The word closure, with its comforting implications that grief is a time-limited process from which we all recover. I don't really understand, but but it is what it is. Some part of my heart had been cut out and buried. What was left? Now there was a question worth contemplating. Indeed, it is our task to transfer that love to those who still need us. Nobody likes to be told what to do. No, nobody likes to. Really nobody. Unless you're like in a position where you don't really know where to go, what to do, and all those things. Like, then of course you need some help. But nobody really likes to just be like delegated, some sorta. And I think it is also something to really take care of, especially when you are in a leading position, especially when you are in just the HR department and whatever you're doing job-wise, it's probably going to be something that's quite important, I don't know. I think that's just also having something to do with empathy and being empathetic and just trying to understand the other person and maybe being like, well, would I like to have that? Even though it's not always the right just thing to think about, actually, because I really hate that saying. I hate it just actually more than anything else, probably, that you should be doing something to other people that you would also like to get, I'm always talking about hugs. Some people like to be hugged and some people don't like to be hugged. And if somebody don't like or does not like to be hugged, then of course you're not going to hug this person, even though you like to be hugged. And this is the problem now. Like, what should you be doing? If you think about doing something to another person that you would also like to get, then you're of course going to hug this person. But it is not about you. And it is a really huge problem. It's a really huge problem that a lot of people are not thinking about. It is not about you. It is about the other person. So guess what you should be doing? You're not going to hug the fucking person. But I would why isn't it working? I actually don't know what it is not working. It's a little strange. Okay, this is working, of course. One button is working. I don't know why. Let's have a look. Well, never mind. It is what it is. Much of what passes for intimate communication involves admonitions and instructions. Involves, basically. Or actually. I asked people in conflict to withhold criticism of those around them to see if this changes the atmosphere. It is amazing how radical this suggestion seems. Awfulizing. The idea that any relaxation in standards or vigilance is the first step toward failure, degradation, and the collapse of civilization as we know it. The conflicts that arise between parents and children are skirmishes, whatever that means. But we're gonna look it up. And we're gonna see. The unit was caught up in several skirmishes, fight, battle, clash, conflict, encounter, confrontation. This all means it. In a long-term power struggle based on the faulty assumption that the primary task of parenthood is to shape the behavior of children through incent instruction. He's often talking about children there, so if you're also a parent, it is also completely worth also going through the first episode, because it's actually the second one, and or going down into the description and or in the show notes if you're on a podcast, and checking out the article on your own and just highlight these things that you like and you think are important and what not. Rules and punishments produce oppositional children who grow into oppositional adults. Since judgmental people were generally raised in judgmental families, they find it hard to envision another way of interacting with those they live with. Which of course makes sense. Of course, it is possible to live without criticizing and directing everyone around us. Yes, it indeed is, and I think it is also a pretty good idea to do so, because listening to advice is of course good. I'm not gonna be like, well, you shouldn't give advice, and you shouldn't also try to give advice, especially if you're seeing that, or when you're seeing, then somebody is actually really going into the wrong direction. Then of course, I think we all would be quite thankful, some kind of, in the end at least, Not necessarily immediately, but in the end, we're all going to be very happy about advice that is actually helping us. And of course, if it is helping us, and if we actually acknowledge it, and if we actually appreciate it, it's a completely different thing, and completely another thing as well. But yeah, it is always easier to keep doing what we are used to, even if it is evidently not working for us. And I think it is quite what I'm doing all the fucking time. Even though I'm really trying to change up things. I really am trying to do so, because I have seen that it's, I don't know why, but I've been doing so many videos and none of them catched on. So maybe I actually have to do something else. Maybe I have to do something different. Maybe I have to improve some things. Therefore, I've tried to just, now at least, edit it in a little bit of a different way, a more interesting way, more cuts, more interesting parts, and all those things to just make the experience a little bit more interesting, I would say. And again, I'm talking about myself, about my perception, about my opinion. The problem is I don't have any other opinions. There's nobody yet, I think, even though it depends, But listening to the end consumer and listening to the person that is actually giving a fuck about whatever you're putting out is definitely something that makes sense, rather than listening to yourself and your opinion and what you think is kind of what you should be doing. The primary goal of parenting, beyond keeping our children safe and loved, is to convey to them a sense that it's possible to be happy in an uncertain world, to give them hope, basically. Do this by example, demonstrate qualities of commitment, determination, and optimism, which totally makes sense. Like, I think this just really makes sense to teach children how to be happy, how to see the good, how to be optimistic. All these things are pretty necessary in life and pretty important in life as well. The major advantage of illness is that it provides relief from responsibility. Behavior that is reinforced will continue. Behavior that is not will extinguish. Which means if you're telling your kid or somebody else that, in terms of like, if somebody's doing something and you praise that, and you praise that person for doing that, and you're gonna be like, well, you did that so amazing, and you're just giving really great feedback, and you tell them that they just are so fucking amazing, they're gonna do that more often. But if you're just not saying anything, just as a contrast, or you actually are like, well, I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted. I hate you. You're just such a piece of shit. Of course, just please don't do that, especially when it is about your children. But it just totally makes sense. If you're reinforcing certain behavior, they're going to do it more often. But if you're not doing that, they're not going to do it more often. It just makes sense, I would say. But it is definitely also something that not too many people are thinking about, I guess, at least. So not really consciously. Maybe subconsciously it is something that's, at least in my point of view, just makes sense, I guess. But just in terms of that, like, we're not always going to think about that, even though it makes sense. And even though it just is something that's pretty logical and whatnot. But yeah, we are, when sick, told to take it easy. The longer someone is disabled, the greater the chance that the illness will become a part of a person's identity. Which is, by the way, something that I'm seeing, I normally just don't take any time off, even though I'm just might not be feeling that well. Sometimes I am, and I kind of just am able, and I'm so thankful for my health, and I'm so thankful for just not being ill that often. I really am so incredibly just thankful, and also for those small amounts of people that are actually giving a fuck about whatever I'm putting out there. I'm really, really incredibly happy about that. So thank you if you're doing so. Thank you if you're just listening to this, and thank you if you're just watching this. I really heavily appreciate that. Couldn't even tell, or I can't even tell. Surgery and drugs have contributed to the sense that healing is something that happens to us rather than something in which we are active participants, inducing a kind of passivity in those afflicted. But no, I think, like, let's talk about meditation. Let's talk about stretching after you've been working out. It is active fucking recovery. It's a part of life. It is something that we should be doing. One of the things that defines us is what we worry about. A misfortune fund that could be used to compensate people facing extraordinary expenses that were no one's fault, for example, parents of children born with disabling abnormalities, victims of crime and natural disasters. Surely, this would be fairer and more compassionate than enriching a few winners in the litigation lottery. Such a system would reinforce the belief that we all share in the inevitable uncertainties and risks that are a part of life. Threats must be identified realistically in our personal lives as well. Much of what we do is driven by fear of failure, unfortunately, but it also makes sense to give a fuck about that and minimize the amount of losing you are having in terms of not being dumb about it. I think failure is good. I think making mistakes is good, but it should not be dumb. It should really not be dumb, at least in my point of view. Like minimizing the, for example, amount of money you're gonna lose. It's of course the upsides are also not gonna be that high if you're able to minimize that. If you're able to not be that risky. You should be managing this in an appropriate way, I would say. So that you're having a certain amount of risk, of course, but there's not gonna be just too much risk, which leads to too much losing in the end and all those things. It wouldn't make too much sense, at least in my point of view. There is no more powerful desires than the pursuit of happiness and the struggle for self-respect. Yeah, I think I am not gonna finish up with this one. I do hope that I'm gonna just do that afterwards. I hope that I'm gonna do that just in a later episode. Maybe there's gonna be a third episode. I have to think about it. I really have to think about it. But yeah, I wish you the best health, happiness, and also success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to be remembered, which basically means your legacy, which basically means just being a good person and then also being remembered as a good person. 3 questions that I'm having for you are: why are you here? What are you trying to change? And what is bothering you the most? These 3 are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, since a lot of companies started out with solving something in the first place that really pissed them off. There's also probably going to be something like that in your life as well. So just have a look at your life and have a look at whether there is actually something that is bothering you quite a bit, because it's probably also bothering something or someone else as well. But I'm gonna see you the next time. I at least hope. Please consider subscribing. Would mean the world to me. And I'll see you the next time.